All right, so let's take a little walk together. And let's walk into the laws of Canada, whether they be civil statutory laws or fundamental foundational laws, common law rights, fundamental human rights and freedoms. Many people think that when they say the word "Oh Canada," when they say Canada, they're referring to a geographical landmass. They're referring to the lakes and the rivers and the forest and the roads and all the physical properties of Canada that are out there in the geographical area. But that's not what the courts have said. When we look to the definition of Canada, in the Constitution Act of 1867, the Supreme Court of Canada has said that although further, Section 91.1 gave the Queen the power with the advice and consent of the Senate and House of Commons to alter the Constitution of Canada, except in certain expressly designated areas, it does not confer a power to amend the BNA Act. The word Canada in Section 91.1 does not refer to Canada as a geographical unit, but refers to a juristic federal unit. So when you say the word Canada, right, you're not referring to the landmass, the court said. You're referring to a juristic federal unit. And a juristic unit is an artificial person. The courts have ruled and said that Canada refers to a corporate body. That's what it is, a corporation. So we see that the courts have labeled and declared that the word Canada in the Constitution Act doesn't refer to a geographical area, but it refers to a corporate body. It refers to a corporation. And in a corporation, right, we find executive powers at work. That's the type of powers that operate in corporations, executive powers. Well, when we look to the Constitution Act of Canada, 1867, we find a witness that agrees with what the court has said. It says in Article 9 that the executive government and authority of and over Canada is hereby declared to continue and be vested in the Queen. Well, she passed away recently, right? So it's the king now. It's King CHUCKLES. Sorry. I mean King Charles. He's the executive government. He has the authority of this corporate body, according to Article 9 of that Constitution Act of Canada. So the executive government and the authority operates within the king. Well, why is the Constitution Act declaring that it's executive powers? Well, we know why. The Supreme Court has already told us. Because Canada is a corporate body in law. So when we look into this corporate body, into this corporation called Canada, designated Canada, we look into a statutory power. It's called the Interpretation Act. And we look at Article 8.1, and it teaches us that both the common law and the civil law are equally authoritative and recognized sources of law of property and civil rights in Canada. So common law is equally authoritative as civil law in Canada. Common law is still in operation in Canada. Common law still exists, and the rights afforded to an individual under common law still operate, still hold power, still have force here in this corporate body. All right, so we understand that Canada is considered a corporate body in law, and the powers in operation in Canada are executive powers. And within that body, Canada, there's common law and civil law both in operation. And civil law is what attaches itself to an individual who is considered a statutory creature. And common law is an expression of our human rights and fundamental freedoms. The courts have said that common law must develop in accordance with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That since the implementation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, now our common law flows through that charter. And we must call on that charter in order to invoke our rights and our freedoms. What we need to understand and we need to realize is that civil law operates upon statutory creatures. And common law is where a man or a woman, a human being, can stand under their fundamental human rights and freedoms. All right, so let's look into another court judgment. Thompson Newspaper Limited versus Canada. This is what's written in that judgment. It says, while individuals as a rule of law have full legal capacity by operation of law alone, artificial persons are creatures of the state and enjoy civil rights and powers only upon the approval of statutory authorities. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights. He owes no duty to the state, since he receives nothing from them, beyond the protection of his life and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land long antecedent, long before the organization of the state, and can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. So as a human being, as a man or a woman, where your fundamental rights and freedoms, where your human rights and freedoms abide or exist within the context of law, it's called your full legal capacity. When you stand as a man or woman, you are standing under your full legal capacity. And you have your human rights and freedoms that you can exercise. Now, these rights and freedoms, right, they were not given to you by the corporate body Canada. The courts have said that these rights existed by the law of the land long before the organization of the state, long before the organization of the corporate body called Canada. Before there was a Canada, before there was America, before there was a Germany, right, there was fundamental human rights and freedoms. Whether you believe that they come from the Lord, from God, or whether you believe that they come from nature, they were in existence. And here the courts are telling us that we have full legal capacity. But an artificial person, right, which is considered a statutory creature, the courts have said they enjoy civil rights. And these civil rights only come through statutory authorities. Now, what's a statutory creature? What's an artificial person? A statutory creature is a driver, a worker, a student, a fisherman, a consumer. All these designations in law are considered a statutory creature. And that statutory creature is controlled by statutory law, by civil law. So, for example, the taxpayer, right, is a statutory creature, and he is controlled by the income tax enactment. The driver is a statutory creature, and he is controlled by the highway safety code. So in every capacity that you can operate as an artificial person, as a creature of the state, as a statutory creature, there's a subsequent law that controls your actions. Now, when you take recognition as a statutory creature, you are limiting and abridging your fundamental rights and freedoms. Because only under your full legal capacity as a man or a woman can you exercise, can you call upon your fundamental human rights and freedoms, which is an expression of common law. But if you take recognition as a statutory creature, if you take recognition as an artificial person in law, then you've lost your ability to stand under your full legal capacity. And you're only exercising rights and duties and obligations that are coming from statutory law. Again, so if you're a taxpayer, right, the income tax enactment is applied against the taxpayer. And the government will claim, because you're a taxpayer, that's your designation, now you owe the obligation to the income tax enactment. And that's how they're doing this in Canada. That's how they're playing with the law in Canada. They're taking us out of our full legal capacity. They're taking us out of common law. They're taking us out of our fundamental rights and freedoms and treating us as a statutory creature. All right, so we're looking into the definition of a juridical personality, a statutory creature. And we're taught that a juridical personality is an artificial person. It's an entity, such as a corporation, created by law and given certain legal rights and duties of a human being. A being, real or imaginary, who for the purpose of legal reasoning is treated more or less as a human being. So we see it clearly, right? If you stand as a statutory creature, if you stand as a juridical personality, a juridical person, an artificial person, if you stand as a driver, as a taxpayer, as a fisherman, well, you've only been given certain legal rights and duties of a human being. Not all, right? And you're treated more or less as a human being. So there's two capacities in operation. We see the capacity of full legal capacity, the human being, the man or the woman, standing under their human rights, their fundamental freedoms. These rights and freedoms are not given to them by the state. They exist by the law of the land alone. They exist way before Canada, America, Germany, or any other country became a country. Those rights are there for you to stand on and operate. However, if you take the capacity of artificial creature, of statutory creature, then you're only given certain legal rights and only given certain freedoms of the human being. And law is not treating you as a human being. Law is treating you as a statutory creature that is being controlled by the king's laws. That's what's transpiring. Now we look a little deeper into the law, right? And we look into Quebec Civil Code, Article 1. And this code's going to teach us. And this code's going to show us everything I've been saying here. It's going to show us the distinction. We don't need it, right? We see the courts are already saying it. But nevertheless, in the Quebec Civil Code, Article 1, it says, every human being possesses a juridical personality. So do you hear that? There's a distinction between the human being and what the human being possesses. So every human being can operate as an artificial creature. Every human being can operate as a statutory creature. So there's two operations in law. You can stand as a human being, or you can stand as a statutory creature. Now look what Thompson newspaper versus Canada said. It says everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. And if you follow my videos, you know the word here, everyone, only means human beings. It's only referring to a human being. And it goes to say, it serves to underline the human element involved. Only human beings can enjoy these rights. Stop. So only human beings can enjoy these rights. So statutory creatures cannot enjoy these rights. Well, what rights can they not enjoy? Well, they cannot enjoy the right to life, they cannot enjoy the right to liberty, and they cannot enjoy the right to the security of the person. Only human beings can enjoy these rights. Only human beings can exercise these rights. Only human beings can stand under their full legal capacity, and under their full legal capacity, these fundamental rights and freedoms are available for them. Everyone then must be read in the light of the rest of the section and defined to exclude corporations. Get out of here, corporations. And other artificial entities, incapable of enjoying life, liberty, and security of the person, and include only human beings. Well, what is the court saying here when it says other artificial entities? It mentioned corporations, right? But it didn't describe or enumerate or list what these other artificial entities are. What it's talking about is that statutory creature. Whether you be a taxpayer, whether you be a worker, whether you be a fisherman, whether you be a driver, whether you be an owner, when you stand under that capacity, right, you cannot enjoy the rights and freedoms of a human being. They are not compatible to you. Worse than that, the legislators who created the laws here in Canada didn't attribute them to you, didn't attribute those rights to the statutory creature. So if you stand under civil law, and if you stand as a statutory creature and take recognition thereof, then you've excluded yourself from exercising and standing under your fundamental rights and freedoms. All right, so let us look into the Canadian Citizenship Act. This is an enactment, right? So this applies to a statutory creature. And these are civil laws or civil rights that are in operation here. And remember that we just read that the court had said that a statutory creature cannot exercise the fundamental rights and freedoms. And one of those fundamental rights and freedoms that a human being has was the right to liberty. Liberty was the expression of the nature of the right. And here we read in the oath or affirmation of citizenship, I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Now it would be King Chuckles. King Charles, because Elizabeth has passed away. And he would be the King of Canada, her heirs and successors. And that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. This is an oath. This is an oath that they say you are under. And in this oath, right, it says that you've promised to be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen. You've become her subject. You've become her servant. And the law says a subject is one who owes allegiance to a sovereign and is governed by that sovereign's laws, such as the monarchy's subject. Well, here we see, right? You've given your allegiance to the king. And now you said, I'm going to be governed by those laws. I'm going to stand and follow those laws, those statutory laws, those artificial laws that apply to artificial entities. Well, look at the statutory creature, right? If you call yourself a Canadian citizen, it's lost its liberty. It has no more liberty, right? It's under allegiance to the king and says, I will faithfully observe and follow the laws of Canada, which is my duty as a Canadian citizen. So it owes allegiance to the king. Amen. And that allegiance, right, takes away the liberty of the human being. So as a human being, right, if you stand under your full legal capacity, if you stand under your common law rights, if you stand under your human rights and fundamental freedoms, and these three expressions all mean the same thing. When I talk about common law and full legal capacity, I'm talking about your fundamental rights and freedoms as a man or a woman. Those rights that you were born with. Those rights that belong to you because of who you are. When you stand under that capacity, right, one of the rights you can exercise is liberty, freedom, not to be held in servitude, not to be held in bondage. But here, if you step into the recognition as a Canadian citizen, well, you've lost your liberty. Your liberty has been limited and abridged. It's been removed from you. And they say you're under allegiance to Her Majesty. And you're under allegiance to follow the laws of this corporate body, Canada. So it makes a big difference what capacity you stand under. It makes a big difference what recognition you're going to take before the law. And this is only in one capacity. There's many of these laws, right? For many of the statutory creatures. We could take this away now, the Canadian Citizenship Act, and replace it with the Income Tax Act. And that Income Tax Act would be operable upon the resident, upon the taxpayer. I'm going to teach some stuff coming up here in the next couple of months. Going to blow your mind away. And I don't say it out of pride. And I don't say it to be prideful. But I've learned a lot in the past 2 years. And I've come to a greater understanding and a greater degree of knowledge of my rights and freedoms. So here we see, right, that Canadian citizen. It says they will fulfill their duties as the Canadian citizen and obey the laws of Canada. Well, the laws of Canada refer to the corporate laws in the corporate body. And they're saying you have to fulfill your duties to that corporate body. But yet the courts have said what? You owe no duty to the state in your full legal capacity. You owe no duty to them. In fact, the courts have said they owe you a duty. They owe you a duty to protect your fundamental rights and freedoms, which means that they're not allowed to put you into a position where they limit and abridge your fundamental rights and freedoms. But the people running this government are evil and they're wicked. And the legislators who sit in their suits, in their chairs, around their table, and make up these laws are evil and wicked. And they're stripping and they're limiting and they're abridging tens of millions of people's of rights in this country because the people don't know and the people don't understand what's going on. Why? Well, because they failed to get the Minister of Education. That office, right, it had the obligation to teach you the differences in law, to teach you about your fundamental rights and freedoms, and to teach you about statutory law. But they didn't. They just went ahead and created a whole bunch of domestic law here in Canada. Again, that only operates in the corporate body. But they created a whole bunch of domestic law here in Canada that limits and abridges and steals your fundamental rights and freedoms. And the consequences of that, you live it daily. And the consequences of their actions impact your life daily. I'm going to end this video now. But I just want you to know, and I want you to realize, that when you walk around, right, and you call yourself a Canadian citizen, and you refer to yourself as a Canadian citizen, you're referring to yourself as a statutory creature. You're referring to yourself in bondage. You're referring to yourself as someone in slavery, being held in servitude, as a subject and a servant of His Majesty. And you're saying that you owe obligations to the corporate body of Canada. You need to wake up, and you need to realize that the wool has been pulled over your eyes, and that they've been stripping us and lying to us and stealing from us that which they never had a right to steal from us. This country, if you want to call it that, these executive powers, Trudeau and Harper and all of them, who've played games in the law and who've played games with our rights and freedoms, right? They're all evil and they're all wicked. And they're all working for the Queen, now the King. They're all working for that family to milk us and to steal from us in the form of taxation and mode of taxation, which you turn over money, right? But it's not, it takes you energy. They tax you 40% on the money that you make, right? And that's 40% of your energy. You use your energy to go and make your money, and they take it away from you. And I'm harping on that a little bit because taxation, and they know this, and the courts know this, and the executive power know this. Taxation was never to be forced. But all they've done is create laws to limit and abridge and steal our rights and keep us stupid. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. To keep us dumbed down and to keep us unknowledgeable about our fundamental rights and freedoms, and to make us believe that we have no choice but to be regulated and controlled by these laws, by these statutory enactments. I hope this video has helped you to wake up a little bit and help you to realize that your pocket's been picked, that they came by and they took your fundamental rights and freedoms, your human rights and freedoms right out of your pocket and stole them from you and returned to you obligations and duties as a statutory creature. You keep coming back here to this channel, and you come and listen to my videos that are going to be posted in the next few months, and you come take a journey with me, and I guarantee you at the end of this journey you'll be free. You'll be free from this wickedness. You'll be free from this bondage and this evil, this corruption that they've created through the law and that the judiciary has allowed to transpire here